достаю, да, потом сюда массив становится. Максим, я... Там Катя, мне кажется, встала. Она как театр здесь сильно выделяется.
we have nothing to put up here, eh? It's okay. I'll just read then my article.
In a case of emergency, here is water. If you don't need it,
Good, good.
okay.
I remember when I had my speech with the Holy Father,
Yes.
halfway through,
Oh, yes.
my tongue became dry. It's not normal. I got chewing gum right now, and that keeps my mouth usually good. But I didn't have it with the Holy Father. I will keep it here.
Excuse me, may I have your attention, please? The opening session will begin in a few moments. If I could ask, in the meantime, if you are seated near the edge of one of your rows and there is space in the inner part, please move in toward the middle so that we can accommodate as many people as possible. If it does become full, we have satellite rooms available with the video feed of the session across the quadriportico. Thank you. excuse me, one more announcement, if you will, please. As seats become full, if you do not have a seat in this room, a satellite room with a video feed of the entire proceedings of the opening session is available across the quadriportico in room C008. So if you do not have a seat, please join us over in room C008. Thank you.
So good afternoon, buonasera. Dear colleagues and dear friends, it is a great honor for me to welcome you to Rome to the international meeting of the Society of Biblical Literature. The Pontifical Biblical Institute and the Pontifical Gregorian University are very happy to host this meeting on the occasion of the 110th anniversary of the foundation of our alma mater Biblicum. Both the Gregoriana and the Biblicum have a long tradition of scholarly research, and we are looking forward to stimulating debates, inspiring papers, and what we call fireside talks that will help us to think more deeply about our various fields and our role as educators, interpreters, and students of the Bible. Well, as a head of the local committee, I would like to express my very, very deep gratitude to the fantastic group of our young scholars at the PBI, namely Paola Mollo, Benedetta Rossi, and Dominic Markle, who dedicated much time and energy to make this meeting as enjoyable as possible. This meeting would never have become a reality without Monica Fucci and her team at the Gregoriana and the many other people who generously helped us. Well, despite hard weather, I hope you enjoy the meeting and the eternal city of Rome. Thank you for coming and being with us. Thank you.
Welcome to the 37th International Meeting of the Society of Biblical Literature. The Pontifical Gregorian University and the Pontifical Biblical Institute have hosted this meeting for a fourth time since 1991. We're grateful, very grateful for the willingness of the faculty and the administration to hold a meeting on short notice. The individuals who made this meeting possible are Nuno Gonçalves, Rector of the Gregorian, and Michael Kolarczyk, Rector of PBI. Peter Dubovsky and Dominic Markle led the local committee, which included Paolo Mollo and Benedetta Rossi. Monica Fucci and Maria Tarabola managed the logistical details. Also, locally, two Wednesday evenings concert is sponsored by the Santa Maria dell'Anima College. Please thank these institutions, their rectors, the faculty, and the staff for their support. Thanks also to our sponsors, Atla Baylor University Press, Columbia Theological Seminary, the NIDA Institute for Biblical Scholarship, and Peters Publishing. Columbia Theological Seminary, a new sponsor this year, is helping to support the opening reception. Both Columbia and NIDA also defrayed the registration of 150 students, including those coming here from the majority world and the Southern Hemisphere. Columbia stood ready to support the meeting when plans were for it to be originally in Bangalore, India. They still support it now. Why? Because wherever this meeting is held, this support increases the diversity, the intellectual breadth, and the global community of scholars, values we all share. On the occasion of SBL's 100th anniversary, Ernest Saunders wrote a history of the society. The very last page of the last chapter, called Signs and Portents, noted, biblical and religious studies internationally have been dominated in the past by North Americans and Europeans. The next century may see a new global form of the discipline, because of scholars coming from Asia and the Southern Hemisphere. In 1983, the year after that book was published, SBL held its first international meeting. To be sure, the majority of these meetings have been in Europe. But if one were to compare this year's program with the 2009 program, when this meeting was last in Rome, one would notice the increasingly global nature of the conference. The trajectory of the programming since SBL's 1991 meeting in Rome demonstrates how scholarship has changed dramatically even in the historic center like this in our field. Biblical studies is a both and, including the depth of the historical study and the breadth of interpretation. And not just the history of interpretation, but contextual readings embedded in communities in which traditions influence each other and are as rich and varied as the communities themselves. Our gatherings like this demonstrate what we want the world, not just the field, to be. Today's panel demonstrates this global community of biblical studies. It includes younger faculty and doctoral students who reflect on their backgrounds, their experience teaching and studying in a classical center like Rome, how their social and cultural contexts inform their study, and how their study will inform and transform their contextual reading and teaching, a two-way street, making biblical studies dynamic and ever relevant. Notice something else. There are many senior scholars on this faculty. This panel highlights not them, but the future, its younger scholars and its students. For a few days, we come together across borders and continents for an opportunity unique to this more intimate meeting that offers a clear vision of our future. Please don't miss an opportunity. Go to a session you would not normally attend, listen to a paper by a scholar who you do not know, introduce yourself to a stranger. And once again, thanks to staff, volunteers, participants, the sponsors, and of course our host institutions. Thank you.
Dear Professor John Kucko, dear Father Michael Kolarczyk, dear Father Peter Dobowski, dear professors, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to welcome you today at the very beginning of the international meeting of the Society of Biblical Literature, hosted this year by the Pontifical Biblical Institute and by the Pontifical Gregorian University. I sincerely wish you feel at home during these days. I am sure this meeting will be a special occasion to share with scholars coming from many different countries your most recent biblical researches. Piazza della Pilota, the square in which we are located, is at the very center of Rome and a special place for the biblical studies. At the Biblical Institute and at the Gregorian University, around 550 students are committed to biblical studies at licentiate and doctoral levels. It is not only the number of students, which is quite impressive, but also the tradition we share in the study of the Bible, a tradition which has its origins in the 16th century. In fact, St. Ignatius of Loyola laid the foundations of the Pontifical Gregorian University by establishing in 1551 a school of grammar, humanities, and Christian doctrine known as the Roman College. Soon afterwards, in 1553, classes of philosophy and theology, including the study of biblical languages and the biblical text itself, were added, and this is the reason why the year 1553 is inscribed in our facade. In 1873, the Roman College was renamed the Pontifical Gregorian University by Pope Pius IX, and in 1930, the present university central building was built and inaugurated during the pontificate of Pius XI, in the same Piazza della Pilota where the Pontifical Biblical Institute was already established. Today, the Gregorian University forms an academic community of 2,750 students and 300 professors. 123 different countries are represented, with a majority of students coming from outside Europe. Again, I warmly welcome you and wish you a pleasant stay and fruitful work together here in Rome. Thanks a lot.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as the rector of the Pontifical Biblical Institute, I'm also pleased to welcome all of you to this international meeting. You have heard welcomes from three, from the Peter Dubowski, the Biblical Faculty Dean, from John Futzko, the president of SBL, and from the rector of the Gregorian University, Nuno Gonçalves, and you're going to hear more welcomes from some of our students and professors. But I have a special welcome to give to you. I'm especially pleased to convey greetings from His Holiness Pope Francis, who received our institute on the occasion of the 110th anniversary of its foundation in May. Pope Francis's Secretary of State, Cardinal Parolin, writes, "Dear Father Kolarczyk, His Holiness Pope Francis was pleased to learn that the international meeting of the Society of Biblical Literature will be held in Rome under the auspices of the Pontifical Biblical Institute and the Pontifical Gregorian University. He asks you kindly to convey his cordial greetings and welcome to all in attendance." And he says something about this event. "The history and identity of this city have been significantly shaped by the Bible, whose words have been read and chanted in its synagogues and churches for 2 millennia. In our own time, we can rejoice in the spirit of cooperation and dialogue that has brought together Jewish and Christian scholars in the exploration in the inexhaustible treasures of God's revealed word. His Holiness sees in this meeting an eloquent sign of this cooperation and expresses his hope that it will advance knowledge not only of the biblical text in its historical context, but also its message of wisdom, reconciliation, and salvation so urgently needed in our time." With these sentiments, the Holy Father sends prayerful good wishes for the work of the meeting and invokes upon all taking part God's abundant blessings. Signed, Pietro Cardinal Parolin. In the background of this message from Pope Francis, we should remember that Augustin Bea, a German Jesuit, was rector of the Pontifical Biblical Institute from 1930 to 1949, that is, during the entire period of World War II. During the Second Vatican Council, Cardinal Bea himself became the main author of the document Nostra Aetate, which meant a revolution for the relationship between the Roman Catholic Church and Judaism. Our institute remains committed to this legacy in collaboration with the Cardinal Bea Center of Judaic Studies here at the Gregorian University. We are proud that Amy Jill Levine was the first Jewish scholar to teach a course on the New Testament at our institute this past semester. And together with her co-editor Mark Brettler, she presented the Jewish annotated New Testament to Pope Francis. While the Pontifical Biblical Institute was founded in 1909 to live up to the standards of Protestant biblical scholarship and to defend Roman Catholic doctrine, we are delighted today to do our teaching and research in a spirit of close ecumenical and interreligious collaboration. As I was invited by the local organizing committee to give you a brief introduction to our two institutions, the Gregorian and the Biblicum, I would like to make you aware of this bookmark that you have received in your tote bag. So all of you have it. On one side is represented the Gregorian, and on the other the Biblicum. The Pontifical Gregorian University goes back to the Roman College, which now houses a high school, a famous Liceo Classico Visconti. The Roman College was founded by Ignatius of Loyola in 1551, and whose vestiges you will find in Rome, especially in the two grand Jesuit churches, the Gesù, which is some 500 meters from here, and also San Ignazio, St. Ignatius. St. Ignatius was the chapel of the Roman College, where monumental scholars such as the philosopher and theologian Robert Bellarmine and the polymath Athanasius Kircher taught. It was the work of the German Jesuit Christopher Clavius at the observatory of the Roman College that led to the final Gregorian calendar, which of course we are using to this present day. And it was a general congregation of the Jesuit order that first formulated the statement that the study of sacred scripture be the soul of theology, which was finally taken up in the encyclical of Dei Verbum of the Second Vatican Council. The Gregorian University greatly contributes to the relevance of Scripture in Roman Catholic theology by educating a host of students from all over the world in its 2-year licentiate program and in doctoral studies in biblical theology. You can see the current figures on this slide. It was Pope Pius X who founded the Pontifical Biblical Institute in 1909, and since its foundation, our institute has educated over 8,000 biblical scholars worldwide. Its mission is to be a center of higher studies of sacred scripture and of all related studies. So you can see the other side of the bookmark, the Biblicum. All related studies especially includes ancient Near Eastern studies. The Institute's Oriental faculty was established in 1932 and has contributed significantly to the study of the Sumerian and Akkadian languages and literature. Today, our students come from all continents, as you can see on this map. I notice neither for the Gregorian nor for the Biblical Institute we have a number under Australia, but we have had many students in the past. Our 3-year licentiate program places great emphasis on the biblical languages, history, and exegetical method. Our students, as of this past year, can now choose among 3 strands or courses of specialization. First, our classical exegetical method. 2, a specialization in languages, history, and cultures. And 3, a specialization in hermeneutics that includes reception history and new hermeneutical approaches. We teach mostly in Italian and English, but our students may present their written work in French, Spanish, and German as well. Here you can see some of our young faculty members who recently joined us. These are Jesuit, religious, and lay, although you can't really tell the difference in the photos. It is my great pleasure as a rector to see our community of students and faculty thrive in a global intercultural learning experience and community. Moreover, we are pleased that excellent proponents in our fields of study enjoy teaching here as guest professors at our institute and expose our students to the cutting-edge research of their expertise. I'm not going to name all of these, but I'm sure you recognize John Collins and his wife, Finkelstein, Römer, and others. Emmanuel Tov will join us next semester as well. Besides our regular teaching, we offer in every January, in the break between the first and second semesters, a seminar week for professors of exegesis, many of whom are alumni. Last January, 180 international exegetes participated in our seminar on Luke Acts, convened by Dean Bichard on the far left of that photo. Also, our house, our Pontifical Biblical Institute in Jerusalem, and our programs there in collaboration with Hebrew University, and especially with Stephen Fastberg, who is here in our midst. I'm not sure where he is. His photo is on the far left. Are another great opportunity for our students' exposure to biblical languages and archaeology. Now, having given you a brief impression of our teaching, I would like to say a few words about our activities in publications and research. You are most welcome to submit articles to our flagship journal, Biblica, that celebrates this year its 100th anniversary. I brought an image of it, and also you have it there. For submissions, please go to Peter, this is the Biblica webpage, where you will find the link with information for authors. And you have in your tote books, in your tote bags, a copy that was given. So you have a copy of this, which is a gift to you. We also have the most recent fascicle of our journal Orientalia with Hans Neumann's Keilschriftbibliographie, and your submissions will be graciously received by the editor, Professor Augustinus Gianto. And I would like to use this opportunity to thank all those colleagues who help our journals with submissions and reviews. We also publish textbooks in our series Subsidia Biblica and monographs, including dissertations, in Analecta Biblica. I'm the current editor of these series, and your submissions are most welcome. Beyond our regular publishing activities, our faculty has developed a thriving activity in organizing international conferences. Let me just read some titles of the most recent conferences to give you an impression of the wide range of interests. The Fall of Jerusalem and the Rise of the Torah, published with Mor Siebeck. Changing Faces of Kingship in Syria-Palestine, published with Ugarit Verlag. The Hebrew Bible in the Making, regarding 3 major projects for developing a Hebrew text of the Bible. Stones, Tablets, and Scrolls, 4 periods of the formation of the Bible, also forthcoming with Mor Siebeck. The Political Power of Sacred Texts, hosted here in Rome at the American Academy. The Languages of Palestine at the Time of Jesus, it was sponsored by the Oriental faculty under Craig Morrison, the dean. The proceedings of this are forthcoming in the 3rd fascicle of our journal Orientalia this year. The Nubian Church of Sonkitino, and the publication is planned with Punctum Books. And finally, the Bible and Political Thought. The publication is under review by Cambridge University Press. And the most recent conference, which was held precisely to honor the 110th anniversary of the Pontifical Biblical Institute, Jesus and the Pharisees, an interdisciplinary reappraisal, and the publication is planned with Erdmanns. Moreover, we are working on a research network on Bibel and Babel, and the first session was held at last year's Rencontre Assyriologique Internationale in Innsbruck, with a session on intellectual traditions of the ancient Near East, transmitted through the Hebrew Bible. Isn't all this fascinating? It comes as no surprise then that our energetic faculty contributed, within the limited time of 3 months for organization, no less than 25 sessions and events to this international meeting of the Society of Biblical Literature. Let me say a final word of appreciation for your presence here at this meeting. We hope that you will be enjoying not only the academic discussions at this conference, but also the sublime beauty of Rome. Just a walk in the Old City can be refreshing even in the heat. Our institutions have a mission to foster biblical scholarship with a global outlook, a mission received and confirmed from the popes for more than a century. This mission is both fascinating as well as extremely challenging. We ask each and every one of you, therefore, seriously, to join us in this mission by contributing to our teaching, publications, and conferences. We count on your kindness and support of our common mission. Welcome to Rome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to introduce my colleague Dominic Markle, Professor for Old Testament Exegesis at Pontifical Biblical Institute.
And this is Benedetta Rossi. She teaches prophetic literature at the Pontifical Biblical Institute. John Katzko invited us to share with you why we think that thorough studies of ancient languages and other classical disciplines in biblical studies still matter. And we thought it would be most interesting to ask our doctoral students and young faculty from different continents how they would answer this question.
We are proud this evening to share with all of you the joy of our global community of studies and research in the Bible. We shall embark on a trip around the world that will lead us to Syria, Hong Kong, China, Brazil, Slovakia, and Rwanda. I am delighted to introduce the first panelist, Jihad Youssef. Jihad is a Syrian monk of Mar Musa Monastery in the Syrian desert. He finished his licentiate at the Pontifical Biblical Institute, and he is currently completing his doctoral studies at the Gregorian University. Thank you very much indeed for coming from Syria for the ISBL and for sharing your experience with us.
Dear friends, Assalamu alaikum. Jihad is my name. As you may know, it is a very Christian name. Actually, it means struggle or spiritual and moral effort. I am a monk in love with the Bible, a member of the community of Al-Khalil monastic community of Deir Mar Musa, the monastery of St. Moses the Abyssinian. Founded in Syria in 1991 by the Jesuit father Paolo Dall'Olio, who disappeared in Raqqa, Syria in July 2013. We are monks and nuns. Our superior is a nun. Men and women, sinners but forgiven, called to the desert and consecrated for the love of Jesus Christ for all mankind, and in particular for Muslims as persons and Islam as a religion. The community has an ecumenic color. We follow the Syriac Catholic Rite under the authority of the Bishop of Emesa, Homs today. Yet we come from different Christian confessions, both Oriental and Roman Catholic, Greek and Syriac Orthodox, and Lutheran as well. Our life is based on three priorities within a single horizon. First, the absoluteness of the spiritual life, since for a monk or a nun, solo Dios basta. God alone is enough, or only God is enough. Second, manual labor, an educational value for us and for our visitors. This is a call to responsibility towards the material world, a partnership between God, who creates the universe, and us, who should safeguard it. For example, but not only, through respect for the biodiversity in the monastery's region. And third, Abrahamic hospitality, freely welcoming everyone in the name of God, and thus receiving God himself in everyone. Our example is Ibrahim al-Khalil, Abraham, the intimate friend of God, who received him unaware at the Oaks of Mamre. The heart of our hospitality is that of receiving guests in our prayer, which becomes intercession for every soul, in particular for the Islamic communities and for people who are poor, marginalized, and suffering. Our horizon is the mutual understanding, building of harmony, friendship, and deep esteem with Islam. Because of the ongoing war in Syria, we became engaged in humanitarian aid, material, moral, and spiritual, for the displaced, refugees, and needy people in Syria, Iraq, in Rome, where we are present, such as the restoration of homes, medical assistance, a kindergarten for children, and yes, a school of music for youth. In 2015, another monk of ours was kidnapped by ISIS. After 5 months, he escaped, thanks to the help of Muslim friends. We also lost our Mar Elian monastery. We were close to death and afraid, but chose to stay in Der Mar Musa as long as we can, faithful to our vocation, not to be heroes, in fact we're not, but to remain in solidarity with our Christian parishioners of Nabik and our Muslim friends as well. Both of these, when talking about us, say our monks and our monastery. We believe brotherhood is possible and good, and that if we as human beings want to live a good life, either we live in solidarity or no one can truly live in dignity. In this particular context, my community made and continues to make a sacrifice, sending me first to the Biblicum and then to the Gregoriana to discover, conserve, and share the Christian heritage written in Arabic, our liturgical language, that of the Holy Quran. I'm doing my PhD under the supervision of the Jesuit professor Felix Körner. It is about the paradise of Christianity, an 11th century Arabic Christian commentary on the entire Bible, made by the Syriac priest Abdullah ibn al-Tayyib, which has survived in 3 manuscripts. The oldest one dates back to 1281. My dissertation is a critical edition, English translation, and theological analysis of the part concerning Deuteronomy, which is an endless hymn to God's mercy and a tireless jihad against idolatry, with a special attention given to pastoral and moral issues, in language clearly enculturated with Tayyib's contemporary Islamic context, and of course influenced by the Peshitta in the Syriac language. Studying is a mission, and we believe it is worthy and necessary in general, because the Church of God today, more than any other time, needs well-formed persons, lay and consecrated, at the service of the common good of humanity in the perspective of the coming kingdom of heaven. Classical studies of the Bible, besides being amongst the most appropriate for monastic life, are fundamental for a life of faith and for the future of interreligious dialogue. Full of hope, we have decided to study and prepare a better future for our wounded Syria, which I left yesterday only and specially to tell you these words. Dear brothers and sisters, we are not giving up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jihad. We have invited Sister Ahida Obeid from Lebanon, student at the Pontifical Biblical Institute, to sing us the Song of Hannah in Arabic in commemoration of the tragic fate of many Christians and all those who are suffering in the Middle East.
تهلل قلبي بالرب لأني ابتهجت بخلاصك لا قدوس مثل الرب لأنه ليس أحد سواه لا تكثر من الكلام
Thank you very much indeed, Sister Rahida. Our next panelist is a doctoral student at the Pontifical Biblical Institute, Julita Hoi from Hong Kong, China.
Good afternoon. Today I'd like to share with you why I think that language learning is important for the biblical formation in my diocese. Although our professors in Rome forbid us to use any modern translation in the classroom, after class we like to read Bible translation of our fellows in different languages. One day, a fellow student opened my Bible and said, "No matter what, I will never learn Chinese." Why? Because it's too difficult, he said. He didn't know that the Bible he was holding was translated by an Italian Franciscan friar, Gabriele Allegra. When Allegra was young, he heard that there was no complete Chinese translation of the Catholic Bible. He didn't know Chinese, but he said, "Okay, I will do this." And he left for China in 1931, shortly after his priestly ordination. He set 2 simple rules to guide his work, that is, translate from original languages and consult ancient versions if necessary. The task was not easy at all. After a few years, he was fatigued and had to return to Italy in 1939. But he took that opportunity to equip himself and learned Syriac, Aramaic, Hebrew, and Greek here in our institute. He left for China again in 1940. Later, he recruited some Franciscan friars to help him. The team was transferred to Hong Kong in 1948, and the whole project was completed in 1968. And then in the second half of the 1980s, when Hong Kong was still a British colony, our diocese was actively preparing the faithful, offering them theological, biblical, and liturgical trainings. The Biblical Institute was founded in 1987. They have no campus, no full-time professors. Students have class in a Jesuit school. Each time they bring along the microphone and a computer for professors. And this is the seminary college. Since 1989, they have been offering part-time program for those who have to work. And I was graduated from that program in 2005. During the studies, I was especially inspired by a Salesian professor. In his first lesson of the Minor Prophets, he required us to read each of the 12 books thrice. Why thrice? Because bowing thrice is a gesture to express our profound respect, and he wanted us to study the Word of God in this manner. He is also a graduate of the Pontifical Biblical Institute, and I wrote my final paper with him the year after he got his doctorate here. At the final stage, we met every Saturday after class to go through my paper word by word. Once he asked me to check the multiple meaning of a Hebrew term. At that time, I didn't know Hebrew, not even its alphabet. So what can I do? I chose a pocket-sized dictionary in the library and compared his term with all the symbols in the dictionary. At last, I found the term, I found it, but of course it was not what he wanted. Then some years after graduation, I determined to quit my job and come here in Rome to study. After the licentiate, I returned to Hong Kong and taught in the college for 2 years. Nowadays, many students are working outside the church, and they are not studying for their career. In a society where overtime work is the norm, coming to class is already a challenge. Once, a student who is a lawyer told me she felt like a criminal every time she left for class, but in those 2 years, she was never late. These students were amazing. They asked a lot of questions and enriched one another with their diverse experience and knowledges. After 2 years of teaching, I came back to do my doctorate in 2017 and have just finished the preparation year. The process makes me realize that I still have much to learn and to explore, and I'm very happy to be here again. Thank you.
Thank you, Giulietta. Let us now travel across the ocean to Brazil. Leonardo Pessoa da Silva Pinto, faculty member of the Biblical Institute, was raised in Belo Horizonte. After a bachelor degree in law with a dissertation on the victims of torture, he ended up studying the Septuagint. His dissertation on the textual tradition of Samuel was recently published, and he has an article on the Kaige version in the most recent issue of Biblica. We are eager to learn more about your deep fascination with textual criticism.
Good afternoon. I am a Catholic priest from Belo Horizonte, southeast of Brazil. Belo Horizonte is a big city, the state capital of Minas Gerais, one of the states of our federation. And our diocese has an important role for the church in Brazil. A great number of seminarians study philosophy and theology at the Pontifical Catholic University of Minas Gerais, one of the biggest pontifical universities in the world, where we receive students from the whole country. During the years of my theological studies, my interest and curiosity for the Bible grew, and at a certain point I told the rector of the seminary that I would like to continue my studies, especially in the field of the Bible. One day, after 1 year or so, my bishop told me that I would study the Bible in Rome and would pursue a master's and a doctorate degree abroad. That took me by surprise, and I did not know how to react. He even added that those studies might take some 8 years to complete, and the thought of being away for so long completely scared me. I did not understand at first why one should come to the Biblicum to study the Bible when we have good programs of postgraduate studies in biblical theology in Brazil. I was not sure that the effort and the investment were justified. Because of the length of the program, the lack of resources, and the proportionally small number of priests in Brazil, not many dioceses can afford sending their priests to the PBI for their masters, let alone the doctorate. In any case, I decided to accept the challenge, and the first time I entered an airplane was to travel to the place where I spent the next 10 years of my life, this very city of Rome. I remember that I was so inexperienced that I even lost the connection flight from Lisbon to Rome. After falling in love with this wonderful city of Rome in the first weeks, the studies at the PBI started, and I faced the challenges of our program. For a Brazilian, one of the main difficulties in studying in the Biblicum is the need of learning so many languages, ancient and modern, something that is not emphasized in Brazilian school system. Because of this, I came to Europe also with the task of staying here during summer vacations to study languages, and so I did. After some catching up with the languages and uncountable hours of study, I fulfilled the original project conceived by my bishop. I finished the master's and later my doctorate, discussing textual criticism and narrative analysis of the second book of Samuel. I even had my thesis, different literary editions in 2 Samuel 10:12, published a couple of months ago, something that brought me great joy. In any case, when I finished the doctorate, I was ready to go back to my hometown and start working in our university as planned. What came next, however, was completely unexpected. My thesis supervisor, Father Stephen Pisano, and the authorities of the Biblicum invited me to stay and prepare myself to teach in the Biblicum. I couldn't believe it. I was happy and confused at the same time. I was only the third Brazilian to complete the doctorate in over 100 years of the PBI, and was now being asked to enter the team of professors and researchers of the Institute. Now, the significance for our church of having one of their own working in a pontifical institute in Rome became clear to me and to my people in Brazil, and I accepted the invitation. At the 12th of October of 2017, feast of Nossa Senhora Aparecida, patroness of Brazil, the first Brazilian ever to teach in the Biblicum gave his first class on topics related to the Septuagint. I'm glad about the opportunity to work in an important center of research in biblical studies, to contribute to forming new generations of biblical scholars, and to help building bridges between Brazilian researchers and the PBI. The experience of teaching a multicultural group of students is intellectually very instigating. This semester I had around 20% of my students coming from the Americas, 20% from Europe, 25% from Asia, and 35% from Africa. This diversity is really amazing here. Back to the question I asked myself before coming to Rome, years later I can answer why Latin Americans, Brazilians in particular, should come to learn Bible in the Biblicum. First, the focus of the study is different from most of our faculties in Brazil, and therefore the teacher or researcher formed here can offer a different contribution. Second, the student will be exposed to a different culture, and this is in itself a rich experience. Third, the student here has contact with people from all over the world, and this exchange is invaluable for personal growth. At last, I can add to this list that they should send their students also because a fellow Brazilian will be here to welcome him or her. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonardo. From Brazil, we are traveling back to Europe, to its very heart, that is Slovakia. We look forward to the presentation of Martina Korytiakova, doctoral student at the Biblical Institute.
Good afternoon, everybody. Some of you perhaps know my country, Slovakia, but it was a part of Czechoslovakia. But our nations have been happily divorced for more than 25 years, although it doesn't sound very Roman Catholic. However, I have to confess, I was born in communist Czechoslovakia. Thank God the regime fell when I was 7. Nevertheless, I feel its impact long after, because I still live in a post-communist environment. It means in a context where, unlike the political economic transition, the social transformation of generations once socialized in communism doesn't happen so fast. The past still casts its shadows on the present, and the Slovak Catholic Church is no exception. For instance, there is still a need to develop biblical education, because the long-lasting blockade resulted in a significant lack of biblical and theological literature in my mother tongue. Suffice to say, the first scholarly biblical commentary was only published in 2008, and mainly thanks to the first Slovaks who finished their biblical studies at the PBI after the Velvet Revolution. It was really providential that one of those PBI alumni became my professor of Old Testament in Slovakia. Indeed, the way in which he explained the Bible in conservative circumstances was unique and revolutionary. Being aware that our church needs more of this wind of change to grow, I decided to study biblical exegesis too. What a disappointment, however, to be told to prepare myself for the reality that lay women have very limited opportunities in my church and my country. Among other things, at that very moment I found out why none of my professors at the theological faculty was a woman. These poor prospects of mine as a laica didn't discourage me. but I took my arrival at the PBI as a challenge and a mission, metaphorically comparable to that of another female called Laika too. Ah, you got it, thank you. Indeed, my studies at the PBI have been like being launched into the space of critical, scientific, and rigorous studies of the Bible, yet still with a sense of humility to the word, which in contrast to us remains forever. Unlike the Soviet Laika, I did survive on my initially thought to be mission impossible, and after 4 years I became the first Slovakian lay woman to finish the licentiate at the PBI. And since I liked my stay in the PBI space so much, I still enjoy it as I continue my doctoral studies focusing on space in the Book of Judith. Despite the fact that I'm working within a purely feminine team, I didn't choose a feminist approach but a narrative critical one. In fact, narrative space had already been of my interest to me during my licentiate studies, yet my initial effort to consult the issue of space in introductions to biblical narrative analysis, which were accessible at the time, left me perplexed, realizing that there is almost no place given to space. But from my childhood I remember that our mothers have told us every folk tale beginning with the aspect of space and time. And in English, space is there as well, though time is in the foreground. Thus the update of my theoretical knowledge by drawing upon current narratology was necessary, and up until now, my work on narrative space left me convinced about its relevance to the interpretation of the Judith story. Currently, I'm continuing to deal with the spatial topic in the entire book of Judith, trying to demonstrate that space too helped the author to express the theological and ideological idea in the story. In my research, I've been fortunate to be advised by two specialists on the deuterocanonical literature and the book of Judith. This collaboration is no doubt an enriching experience on a personal and institutional level, but above all, I hope it will also contribute to the knowledge of Judith at the local and universal church level. In fact, Judith is more known from art galleries than from the Bible. Thus, as far as my future is concerned, I'm prepared to follow the example of the heroine Judith, by the way, a lay woman, and to cut off the head of the enemy called the ignorance of the Bible in general, and that of Judith in particular. In my fight against it, the PBI has indeed equipped me well. For now, one can consider my current position of executive manager in a Slovak biblical journal as a humble start. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. We are moving towards the end of our journey by going back to the cradle of humankind, to Africa. Our last speaker is Michel Kamanzi from Rwanda, lecturer at the Pontifical Biblical Institute. His dissertation from Fribourg, Switzerland, on the Gospel of John is about to be published with Cerf in Paris. Michel, please take the floor.
Good evening. Rwanda is a small and beautiful country in the heart of Africa. We are a small country, but with big people and big dreams. As an African lecturer of New Testament exegesis here at the Pontifical Biblical Institute, I'm consoled to specialize in the fourth gospel, the Gospel of John, the gospel of abundant life. In fact, the quest and longing for abundant life is at the heart of African people. As many Rwandese, I was born and grew up abroad from Rwanda in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where my grandparents and my parents had found refuge 60 years ago in 1959, in the first big persecution against the Tutsi in Rwanda. We went back to Rwanda with my family, like many Rwandese from the diaspora, after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, while other Rwandese flee the country to be refugees in neighboring countries. Our story has been marked by colonization, conflicts, wars, displacement. However, the resilience of our people has shaped our lives, and there is now a brighter future for Rwandans in the country and elsewhere. The realities of some of our neighboring countries and other countries in Africa leave us, however, anxious for the future of our African continent. Still, we have hope and work at our small but not so insignificant level for a better future in our continent, recognized as the cradle of humanity and at least by Pope Benedict XVI as the second lung of modern Christianity. The reading of the Bible is at the heart of the faith experience of many of our people in many African countries, and in a special way in Rwanda, where the majority are Christians. As for myself, I was asked after advanced studies in social sciences, which I thought initially more relevant for our African and Rwandan context, to come to Rome to dedicate myself to start the study of the Bible by my Jesuit superiors, of course. I had to obey. The natural choice was the Pontifical Biblical Institute here in Rome, since I was asked to do a foundational biblical formation in view of forming others in our continent. And I think it is what the Biblicon offers the best, the foundations. The study of biblical and ancient languages, history, archaeology, and various exegetical methods. Coming from a post-colonial, post-conflict, post-genocide context, one needs really to start from the foundation to rebuild or to envision a new way forward, even at the level of faith or at the level of the church. In fact, the Bible came to us through Western missionaries who had their lenses for reading the Bible and their own perspective in transmitting it to us. We did not have access to the original biblical languages and backgrounds, and our first access to the text of the Bible was through French, English, or other Western languages, and few of us could read and understand those languages. The incredible chance to have a first-hand access to the biblical text in its original languages, to its sources and background, we have here in Rome at the Biblicum, in an international center of Catholicism and Christianity, if you want, open to dialogue with Judaism and other religions, but also in dialogue with ancient and modern scholarship, is a great opportunity for many of us coming from Africa. It gives us the opportunity to become later independent Bible scholars, mastering the basic tools of exegesis, widening our perspective and enriching our study in dialogue with other students of the Bible coming from different parts of the world. This will definitely enrich our contextual study of the Bible and its inculturation in our context. Being able to do my doctorate in Switzerland after the licentiate at the Biblicum gave me also the opportunity to work in an ecumenical environment, going further in the awareness of my particular, and I will say limited way, African and Catholic way of reading the Bible, called to dialogue with other traditions. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to teach and study more at the Biblicum, where I did my grounding formation in biblical exegesis. And I hope to bring a bit of the dance, the green, and the fresh air from Africa and Rwanda in this institution, which, more than in the past, is opening windows to non-Western ways of approaching the study of the Bible, keeping its strength in languages, history, and various exegetical methods. And meeting biblical scholars in such an international and open forum is definitely an opportunity and a challenge. I often ask myself why one will choose to take the pain, losing even hair, of studying ancient languages, history, archaeology, various exegetical methods, if it is not for the sake of finding more meaning in life or about life. Murakoze cyane. Thank you very much. Murakaza neza, murisanga. Welcome, feel at home.
Thank you, Michel. As we conclude our trip around the world, we should give you some practical indications. You will find the entrance of the Pontifical Biblical Institute across the square, from the right side of the building. You will find our famous library on the second floor. The library will be open to every participant who wears the badge during the conference. Please, do not leave Rome without having visited our library. You will find the Aula Magna on the third floor of the building, at the very end of the corridor, where the evening conversations will take place. Tomorrow, Tuesday, with Israel Finkelstein and Thomas Römer, and Thursday with Eileen Schuller, Agustino Schianto, and Stephen Fosberg. Please approach our local student volunteers for any practical questions, whom you recognize by the white t-shirts with the PBI's emblem. I take this opportunity to thank our volunteers for their generous help.
And I would like to add a practical indication for the concert on Wednesday evening, 6:30 p.m. It will be a concert of Baroque music with biblical themes, as you can see on the program, and I can promise that it will be of very fine quality. The concert will be held at the church Santa Maria dell'Anima near Piazza Navona. So how do you go there? First, you walk straight to the Pantheon, about 12 minutes. You arrive at the Pantheon, can't miss this landmark. Then you walk straight, nothing is straight in Rome, straight to Piazza Navona, another 5 minutes. You arrive at Piazza Navona, you can't miss it. And there now, this is important, you take the alley to the right of Sant'Agnese Church, the red arrow. From that alley, you turn right and you find Santa Maria dell'Anima on your left. The church seats 240 people, and there is some space to stand. If need be, we invite those who feel strong enough to stand and to leave seats to others. And speaking about music, it is my pleasure to invite again the choir of the Russian Orthodox parish of Rome, St. Catherine, conducted by Maria Koryakova. And I should add that Kirill, would you please turn around to yeah. Kirill is our student at the Pontifical Biblical Institute, and he made this possible. Thank you so much.
we would like to offer you one more piece. Now it's not a biblical text, it's a liturgical hymn. The text is very simple. It begins in this way: Christ is risen from the dead.
Thank you very much indeed for this beautiful ecumenical gift. This international meeting was originally planned to be held in Bangalore, India. I think India's importance in the field of biblical studies is demonstrated by the fact that our new incoming dean, Henry Pattarumadatil, is from Kerala, South India. He has the last word.
Buonasera. I believe this opening session, with the warm welcome that we all have received, the passion with which our panelists have spoken about the importance of biblical studies, and the peace and joy that these beautiful melodies have hummed into our hearts, already gives us a foretaste of the coming days of this meeting. Thank you, Professor John Kutsko, the President of the SBL. Thank you, our rectors, the panelists, the moderators, Sister Ragida, and the members of the choir. Special thanks to our Dean, Peter Dubowski, and his team, who have made an enormous effort to host and organize this SBL International meeting here in Rome. We are extremely happy to have you all here with us these days. Now, I would like to invite you all to an informal reception that we have organized to celebrate our being together. We thank the Columbian Theological Seminary and the Biblical Institute for sponsoring this reception. And we have arranged the reception in two places: at the atrium of the Gregorian University and at the courtyard of the Community of the Biblical Institute. Now, where to go? For organizational reasons, let me make some suggestions. All those who are sitting here in this aula, Aula Magna, may go to the Biblicum community. And those of you who are sitting in the other aulas are invited to go to the atrium of the Gregorian. Well, this is only a suggestion. Please feel free to join us anywhere as you like. One more information. kosher food is arranged at the atrium of the Gregorian. So those who would like to have kosher food may go there. Now, the entrance to the biblical community is at Via della Pilota 25, just 10 meters to the left of the main entrance of the Gregorian University. And as you know, our volunteers are there to welcome you in both places. Thank you and welcome.